Bodgerove, good afternoon, everybody. You're welcome to our webinar, Energy Saving for Multi-Unit Developments. David Rouse is my name, Multi-Unit Developments Advisor with the Housing Agency. We have a large number of people registered for the session this afternoon, about 650 people have registered to attend. I can see that about 200 of you have already joined. So we'll get started in a minute when we have more people logged in. And while they're doing that, I might share a poll where we'd be grateful for your indication of what area of the multi-unit developments or OMC or indeed property sector you are from. So I'll run that poll now, and be grateful if you could answer and let us know what sector represents or what category represents you. Please be assured that the poll is anonymous, so your answer won't be associated with your login or your email or your name. But I would be very grateful. It helps us in running future events if you could let us know what sector or what category best represents you. So are you an OMC director, a homeowner? Are you in the AHB or local authority sector? Are you a renter or a tenant? Are you a property management agent? Are you a construction professional, architect, engineer, developer, etc.? Are you in the legal sector? I know we have professionals joining us from the energy sector as well, so very welcome. And if you could let us know that you're here, and accounting and finance, and you might otherwise indicate that you're other, but I'll run that for another 20 seconds or so, and then we'll start with the timetable for today and let you know what we're going to do and how we'll run things, and we'll stick to the hour mark, and hopefully you're having a nice coffee or a nice lunch to keep you going, and we'll finish up by 1:30 on the dot, if at all, or if at all possible, perhaps even before. So thank you very much to everyone. If you want to give one last vote or one last response to the audience composition survey before I close it down, that'd be great. But we have pretty representative sample. Again, those of you just logging on, the poll is anonymous. So please do share your status with us. So I'll end that now, and thank you very much indeed for responding to that. And I'll share the results on screen, so you can see that we have a diverse audience. 11% are OMC directors, 7% are homeowners, 16% are from the AHB, local authority personnel, small number of renters and tenants, 25% are property management agents, about a quarter again from the construction sector, and colleagues joining us from legal, energy, and so on. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. For those of you just joining, David Rouse is my name, multi-unit development advisor with the Housing Agency. Delighted to have you all with us this afternoon. I'm going to briefly share my screen again, and we'll go through the timetable for today's session, and hopefully you can all see the slides. So we've just done poll one. Thank you very much. I'm going to do a quick intro and update on what we're going to intro on what's happening in the multi-unit development sector at the moment. We'll hand over then to our contributors, who I'll introduce shortly. We'll have time for Q&A, and as I said, we'll finish up by 1:30 and get you back to work, or back to your day job, so to speak. It's just some housekeeping. I'm joined by my colleague Graham Fryer in the background, and Graham is there to keep an eye on the technology, and please use the chat function if you're having any problem with sound or vision, and use the Q&A function for questions that you want to send in to our contributors on topic. We've received about half a dozen questions in by email, so we'll give those priority in the Q&A, and we'll come back to those at the end. The session is being recorded for future use, so it will be available on our YouTube channel, and we will email the slides round to you. So we'll do that by the end of the week, so don't worry about getting those. You will receive those. Again, for those of you just maybe not familiar with the Housing Agency, our headquarters are on Upper Mount Street, and we work with the Department of Housing, local authorities, approved housing bodies, and other stakeholders to promote the building of sustainable communities. A quick update on some news in the sector before we get into the meat of what we're here to talk about on energy saving for multi-unit developments. A quick update on the virtual AGMs situation for OMCs is that the provision continues to apply until the end of December. The review of the Companies Act is underway, and that review concluded in June. You might remember we mentioned some of this in our April webinar, and I understand that work on the legislation is due to commence in the coming months, so we keep an eye on that. I have an ask for you. We're trying to get, as a system, are trying to get a sense of the size of the OMC sector. This is something I highlighted on our last webinar. So if you're a management agent or a company secretary or a director or a lawyer or anyone filing returns on behalf of OMCs with the CRO, please do tick that box on the annual return form B1, and you can see it highlighted there in red to indicate that you are an OMC, so that we can get a handle on the size of the sector. And equally, anyone incorporating a new OMC might do the same on the form A1 as well. So that'll give us a help to get the size of the sector. A reminder that from the 11th of June of this year, the CRO requires all directors to provide PPS numbers in return filing, so they have guidance on their website, as does the Corporate Enforcement Authority. An interesting recent note from the Corporate Enforcement Authority is around guidance about becoming a director, so there's some useful hints and tips in that particular note, and all the slides you see have the URLs and the links for this information. In terms of the reform of management company legislation and the MUD Act, you'll be familiar, some of you, with the Actions in Housing for All and the Department of Justice's Justice Plan. And so latest indications from the Minister for Justice are that her department is working with the Department of Housing and Local Government and Heritage to draft regulations under the Multi-Unit Developments Act in relation to service charges and sinking funds. And again, you can read the detail on that in your own time. Many of you will be familiar with the defects remediation process, and I know some of our presenters today will refer to the challenges that they have faced in their roles in dealing with fire safety and other defects and the realities that are facing many OMCs around the country. You'll all know, perhaps from a recent announcement, that there's a process in place to deal with that remediation process. So there's a frequently asked questions document prepared by our colleagues in the department, available on their website. Recently in July, a code of practice around remediation of apartments and duplexes on the fire safety side was published by the department, and it's there, and links to it and links to lots of other information are available both on the department's website and on our own, including to the portal where expressions of interest in the scheme, in the intended scheme, can be lodged. And the government's legislation programme indicates that legislation around this work is already underway. So useful information there, hopefully, for those of you interested in that topic, very, very serious and important, that's receiving attention. Other guidance recently issued related to it is the Fire Safety Guide for building owners and operators under the Fire Services Act, and lots of other information available on the department's website indeed, so you can access that perhaps as well. PSRA has launched its new strategic plan, and in the recent newsletter draw attention to the content and clarity for letters of engagement between OMCs and property management agents, so you can have a look at that in your own time as well. Closer to the agenda for today is some of the developments in the circular economy around waste and the National Waste Plan for Circular Economy, which was issued recently. There are intended measures or actions to improve waste separation and so on in apartments, and you can read the detail on that, but indications are enhanced roles for local authorities in that particular space. Again, in this space, we see the report of the District Heating Steering Group, which was published in July from memory, and there are recommendations there in relation to contracts involving owners management companies and some suggestions around the Multi-Unit Developments Act, so food for thought there. Of course, lots of information and resources on our own website, frequently asked questions, webinars and training events. All recordings are available on YouTube, and we have 16 today, 17 after this session, different topics available for you to if you haven't already engaged with those, we'd urge you to log on to our YouTube channel, all available there. Our guidance for OMC directors with Chartered Accountants Ireland, always worth a look if you have queries around governance. if you're hiring a management agent or indeed other professionals for your scheme, you can have a look at our guidance around that topic. Coming soon in the next number of weeks is a guide to insurance for multi-unit developments. So we're just finishing up work on that, and so watch our website for that. And in the coming weeks, we have a series of outreach events. So please log on to our website for those, which will be obviously in person around the country. We've had those before, and you can read details on our website. But I suppose they're obviously face-to-face and give people a chance to explore issues and challenges and ask questions there. There's some of the shots of last year's events around the country, and you can go onto our website and get the detail there. Something that we're working on in the background through the European Union is some research on advancing retrofitting in multi-unit developments and apartment buildings. So that research work will be kicking off in the next couple of months, and it'll be very germane to the issues that are going to be raised by our speakers later on. You can read more about that on our website. We issued a press release back in May. Last week or the week before, the Housing Alliance, supported by our own research support programme, issued a very interesting report on energy poverty and climate action in the approved housing body and social housing sector. So very interesting thoughts around some of the reporting requirements for large AHBs and indeed other entities, and the direction of travel around that, and the action and the urgency needed. And there's lots of good information in that. So there's a link to that on our website. Codema recently issued a document there, spotted it last week or the week before, on 100 ways to save energy at home. So granular hits and tips for within your home, be it an apartment or a house in a multi-unit development. Whereas our session today is going to focus more on apartments and the blocks themselves, and the savings that can be undertaken in that regard. If you want to contact us, both at housingagency.ie. But you're not really here to hear from me, you're here to hear from our expert speakers. So we're very grateful and delighted to have with us Nick Sheward, Kate Joyce and Alan Kavanagh. Nick is Director of Property Services with TUA, with a long experience in the property management and social and affordable housing sector. So we're delighted to have Nick with us. We're delighted and grateful to have Kate Joyce, Nick's colleague, the head of sustainability and strategic projects with TUA, and indeed Kate, with a long record in the property investment and asset management sector. So delighted to have Kate, and indeed Alan Kavanagh. Alan, we're very grateful to Alan for his time and generosity in speaking to us today on what IRES are doing in this space. Alan is Managing Director of Property Operations with IRES. So thanks indeed very much to Alan for joining us today as well. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand over straight away to Nick, and Nick is going to, I think, share his screen. Thank you very much, Nick, and over to you.
Thank you, David. Kate, I think, are you okay to share? Okay, I suppose before that starts, David, I'd just like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to present today. I think I'm grateful. I think I would rather be on the other side of this, listening to what was being said. You seem to do this to me quite frequently. So I'm here now, and we can crack on. I suppose most people, again, in terms of the hundreds that's on, most people have heard of IRES. I don't know how many will have heard of TUA. I hope most, but just in case there are some that haven't, we're an approved housing body. We're a social landlord. With the stats are up there, 11,000 homes plus now in management. The bottom stat, which I'm not sure comes up quite clearly, it certainly isn't on mine, is 219 multi-unit developments. So we're involved in 219 apartment schemes with over 4,500 individual apartments. And that is a significant task for us, and the added complication. So that's just a general overview of who we are and the size of the organisation we are. Kate, if you can flip on to the next. Okay, I suppose I'm here to set a context and I suppose just outline the elephant in the room, which is, isn't it lovely to do all this stuff, but how do we do that when we've got, fire safety issues, we've got structural issues that are going on with our properties, we've got water penetration, we've potentially got properties that have got damp, mould, and condensation. So I think that what I wanted to just address was, we're not blind or oblivious to that. We know that those issues exist, and I think it would be wrong to jump into all the good stuff that Kate and Alan are going to talk through
Thanks, Nick. So I'm just going to give an introduction to sustainability, to a strategy and some initiatives that we already have in place that Nick alluded to, just with regard to energy saving across our property portfolio. But just to start with, I suppose, if you consider that we have over 250,000 properties in multi-unit developments nationally, and the commitments in the government's climate action plan around decarbonisation, retrofitting 500,000 homes, replacing inefficient heating systems, but also around biodiversity and making our communities more sustainable, I think there's really great potential here for OMCs and management agents and owners within those developments to consider sustainability across the running of their operations. And I know we're focused on energy savings today, but just from a sustainability perspective, there's really opportunities in many different areas. And that applies to TUA as an organisation as well, which is why we've given a lot of consideration to our ESG and the development of our ESG framework and sustainability strategy. So a pillar of our strategy relates to nature and the environment. And through the implementation of that, TUA are committed to considering the environmental impact of all of our business activities. That includes measures to reduce our carbon emissions, our energy consumption, and our water and waste consumption. So as Nick mentioned, we have 219 multi-unit developments in management, which is the equivalent of 3,500 properties. So in order for us to deliver under our ESG strategy and that commitment under the environmental pillar, we really need to look at our multi-unit developments. So in terms of energy, what that means is looking at the energy efficiency of our existing stock, but also the energy efficiency of the new units we're bringing on board. and addressing risk of fuel poverty to our tenants. So I'm going to talk through some of our approaches to sustainability and energy efficiency. First of all, through sustainability through renovation, which is a key element of our delivery programme. Also sustainability through our retrofitting programme, which Nick has touched on already. And then finally, sustainability through invest to save. So that's where looking at how we can invest now in our multi-unit developments to save in the longer term. So just first of all, this is a slide just around our renovation projects. I suppose everyone has heard that the greenest building is the one that is already exists. Adaptive reuse of existing structures is known to reduce carbon emissions, and renovation projects such as these are a really key part of TUA's delivery programme. So we have a pipeline of refurbishment projects underway. These are examples of some that have already been delivered. 2 were former offices renovated to 86 apartments and 35 apartments each in Cork and Dublin. And the building on the bottom was an older tenement style building in the heart of Dublin 1, which has been renovated to 25 apartments. And all of these have been delivered to a minimum of B or B2 and up to A2 in some cases. The next slide just shows the real intrinsic benefits of renovation projects like that. So this is a life cycle analysis, or an LCA, for one of those office to residential conversions referenced on the previous slide. And the purpose of doing this is just to, I suppose, inform our future decision making for TUA, as well as future decarbonisation reporting, but also it gives you a non-financial rationale for proceeding with these type of renovation projects. And in this case, we've compared the whole of life carbon emissions of a renovation, for an office to residential renovation, against a full demolition or rebuild, or a new build of a comparable residential building. And you can see, you know, the results are quite stark. 62% reduction in whole life carbon emissions compared with the new build of a similar type, or a 73% reduction in whole life carbon emissions versus a demolition or rebuild. So that's looking at, you know, the whole life carbon impact of the building, taking account of the materials, but also the operational emissions once it's up and running. The next slide is just an overview of our retrofit programme to date. So as Nick mentioned, we have a commitment that all TUA-owned stock will have a minimum B2 BER by 2027, so that's 1,500 properties. An ultimate ambition would be to bring those to net zero, but that's longer down the line. We've completed approximately 20% to date, and we'll be closer to 28% by the end of the year. It is a substantial body of work, so that's, from TUA's perspective, it's a spend in the region of 6.9 million. Obviously, an element of that is covered on the SCI grant, but you know, it's a significant project. We note that the cost on an average basis around 24,000 per unit, and generally you're bringing you know, older properties from a G, in some cases rating, up to a minimum of B2 or higher if we can achieve it. This slide just demonstrates the real benefit of that retrofitting programme so far. So we're looking at the reduction in carbon being emitted before and after, and also the energy usage. So 64% CO2 reduction and a 62% reduction in energy consumption. And I'll speak to it towards the end as well. You can see the impact of that retrofitting programme in our overall carbon footprint also. The next slide then deals with our sustainability through invest to save programme. So this is an area of energy conservation that we look at through our standard planned maintenance programme. So every year we look at kind of longer term cost saving initiatives. It's one where we can really make an impact on our multi-unit developments, where we don't have to impede on the interior necessarily of our tenants' homes or rely on any third-party approval. So what we're looking at is we develop a business case for every proposed initiative, try and identify the payback time for TUA and our tenants, or, you know, in some cases there may be a cost neutral impact. The programme is relatively modest to date. We're looking at focusing fitting water softeners in hard water areas, fitting LEDs and motion detector activation in our communal areas. We're also looking at the feasibility of installing PV panels linked to the landlord supply. So that's reviewing roof area of TUA controlled apartment blocks to see what can be fitted, what energy can be generated, and also then what's the payback likely to be. In 2020, we also undertook a consolidation of a utility supplier for all communal areas under management. So obviously we have a number of multi-unit developments nationally. We looked at consolidating it, and it did lead to some additional cost savings. We also examine, it's not to do with energy saving per se, but we examine our open spaces and public areas that are in their control, with the view, or where we have substantial membership of the OMCs, to see if there's potential for a positive biodiversity impact. And another element that we're looking at is innovation. So as Nick mentioned, the hard to treat properties, particularly with apartment blocks. So we think, I suppose, as a large property owner, and we think there's great potential for the approved housing body sector in particular to be a test bed for innovation. So in that context, we're currently participating in a pilot with NextGen, which is effectively using infrared technology through electric wallpaper, which can be applied to ceilings or walls. We're piloting it at the moment on a number of apartments where we have very low BUR ratings, where they're hard to treat properties or unable to apply the standard upgrade measures like external insulation or heat pumps, and where we've had difficulty bringing the OMC on board. So in terms of cost, it's on par with heat pumps. It's thermostatically controlled. You can have different zones in your rooms, which are controlled via thermostat. And this is an option that we're looking at and potential could roll out. Just to note that currently it wouldn't achieve any increase in BUR rating, and also the SEAI grant isn't applicable. So obviously those issues would need to be overcome if it was a viable solution on scale. And then just my final slide is around our carbon footprint. So obviously energy saving is beneficial in terms of cost saving to the OMC, to the occupant, and also looks at wider prevention of fuel poverty. But it has an equally important benefit in reducing carbon emissions. So this is just an analysis of our Scope 1 and Scope 2 carbon footprint for TUA's portfolio over 4 years from 2019. And what it demonstrates is that while our property portfolio is increasing year on year in line with our increased delivery of new homes, our carbon intensity, or the tons of CO2 that are being emitted on a per property basis, have started to reduce year on year from 2020. And 2020 is the year that we started to implement our retrofitting program, our energy upgrade program. So it just shows the real tangible benefit. And although we've retrofitted just under 300 properties to date, which might seem modest, the impact in terms of carbon emissions is immediately beneficial, and that's going to ramp up as our program increases. So that's just a whistle-stop tour of what we're doing in TUA at the moment, and I look forward to hearing from Alan about what IRES are up to. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Kate. Fantastic, and thanks indeed also to Nick. I think very, very clear insights into what TUA is doing to meet the sustainability agenda, but equally realistic about the challenges that are facing OMCs, the elephant in the room, as Nick rightly points out. And to those attendees who are maybe OMC directors or residents or management agents who are struggling with these challenges, there's no doubt about it that there are the day-to-day operational and other issues that are there. But equally, we need to, I suppose, acknowledge the progress that needs to be made for our housing stock and indeed within the multi-unit development sector. And a lot of the ideas I think that we're going to hear, and we have heard, are maybe quite provocative for many in the space who are dealing with the day-to-day operational issues. But what we're aiming to do is to give food for thought and to get the juices flowing, if you like, in estates. And possibly one message as well, I think, that comes from what Kate and Nick had said, is the importance of collaboration in all of this. So all of the people in the development, be it the agent, the residents, the owners, the landlords, whoever acting together. And to that end, I'll hand over to Alan now, and maybe Alan, you want to share your slides, and delighted to hear what IRES are doing in this space. So thank you very much, Alan.
David, I'm just going to get set up here. Hold on. As usual, sorry about this.
No problem. I can also put up your slides if that's helpful. Yeah, if you just want to go to full screen mode, that'd be perfect. Super. That's great. Thanks, Alan. Sorry
about that. Thanks, David, for the introduction there, and thanks, Nick and Kate, for going ahead of me. So I'll kick off now, and I say good afternoon again. My name is Alan Kavanagh, and I work for IRES REIT. So our mission is to provide professionally managed homes in sustainable communities whilst playing our part in the transition to a low carbon economy. As you can see there, we're working with nearly 4,000 homes, 8,000 residents in 37 locations. We've got GRESB accreditation and we're EPRA Gold. One of the things we're kind of proud of at the moment is we've got 100% renewable energy across all our common areas in our buildings. Our 3 pillars for ESG are operation responsibly, protecting the environment and building communities. So, as part of this commitment, we not only want to meet our legislative and ESG commitments, but we are working towards minimising our environmental impact and maximising our contribution to local communities through a wide variety of initiatives. And for ourselves and for everybody in the sector, we're hopefully setting a benchmark for the coming years. In 2022, we reduced our energy consumption by 18% by applying low-cost, easy-to-apply initiatives across the portfolio, which I'll discuss later. We delivered Ireland's first LEED Gold residential building. I'm going to talk in a bit about kind of the energy saving and reduction, but just to note there, as part of our zero waste to landfill policy. In terms of, I know we're talking today about energy savings, but for service charges as a whole, we made significant reductions in our refuse collection bill by reducing contamination. And we worked with an environmental charity group who helped us conduct resident engagement days at our buildings. So it was through this communication and cooperation with our residents that recycling rates went up and those costly penalty charges for contaminated bins went down. So well worth having a look at. So for 2023 and beyond, as part of our goals for this year and beyond, we're constantly benchmarking our progress and continue to monitor new ideas and technology, as Nick and Kate were talking about there earlier on. There's lots of new ideas coming out. So again, all these things can only help us reduce our emissions and ultimately reduce our energy costs. So in terms of next steps, I'm going to take you through some of the simple initiatives. And again, a lot of these are very simple, easy to do initiatives that we've implemented and some of the easy wins. Our approach was to simplify and start small. A lot of it is around education and communication with all the stakeholders. And that, again, is just the most important part of the plan. In the case of a typical residential block with owner-occupiers, landlords, tenants, and managing agents, I think starting with your service charges, as for the most part, these don't seem to be coming down, with utility charges very much high on the agenda, accounting for roughly 13% of a lot of service charge spends. My suggestion is to start with a simple common sense approach. I know we were talking about getting mandates at OMCs, but it's certainly an idea to explore an ESG strategy, or at the very least an energy saving policy, be it at an AGM or an information night. Part of this strategy can help individual owners explore and share economies of scale when it comes to retrofitting and availing for grants for individual homes, and also to explore the energy saving ideas for the building as a whole in your common areas. Some of these ideas are going to require capital investment, but as we've discovered, some of these paybacks can be in less than a year. So any potential savings can be ring-fenced for future capital expenditure. And maybe it is an idea when you're communicating with stakeholders, the idea of around, for service charges, a separate ESG sinking fund. So as I said, start with the easy wins. Current environment is not just about saving money, but to see if service charges can be maintained at the same level. You'd be surprised when you start looking at some of the simple projects, how much money you can save. And again, we were very surprised ourselves when we started implementing some of these projects. So as I say, simple things like motion sensors, LEDs, easy to install, easy payback, and I say easy to implement in any of the buildings. A lot of people were asking about solar panels. Solar panels are not a new technology. It's been around for a long time. So again, we're not breaking new ground on this. But with current, future, and with current and future trends in the energy sector, it's making more and more sense to invest, or at least explore the options available for your building that you either own or manage. And again, just keep in mind that percentage of a service charge bill that's been paid out on utilities doesn't seem to be coming down. There are various options out there and a variety of companies that are offering in this sphere of solar panels. So not every option is going to involve upfront capital expenditure. Paybacks and capex may vary, but ultimately you're future-proofing the building against electricity costs rising. And once you start, you'll see there are other options to explore, such as adding batteries and micro-generation. The slide here is an example of a small building with 40 apartments, give or take. So for those on this call managing multiple buildings, you can see the potential saving for your clients. There are, of course, more and more new technologies out there, as Nick mentioned earlier. But you can see here, simple, small building. We took the electricity bill beforehand was 18,000, 30 kWp installation, roughly about 37,000, reduced our electricity bill down to 4,500. And at the current rate, it's about a 3-year payback. So in terms of energy audits, it's a good place to start. There are various providers in the market who will conduct a professional energy audit for you. And I believe there are also grants available for such audits. But if you want to get started with a simple plan, get out and walk the building, identify where you're spending your money, and see if there are any easy wins. A lot of us presumed we had LEDs in our buildings until we got out and double checked. I've also seen overkill on some lighting installations, which is something you might want to look at. I know in one building alone, we saw about 15 spotlights in a room no bigger than I'm in today. So again, there are some simple kind of easy wins, but the easy place to start if you don't want to go down the route of getting a professional energy audit done is to just get out and start walking your buildings and see what can be done. So again, no matter where you are on this journey, my advice is to start small and build it up. Communication with all stakeholders is critical. Property managers, owners, landlords all need to take a proactive approach. Check who your supplier is. Again, do a health check on who's supplying your electricity. None of us have any loyalty to any of the utility providers out there. You can compare the market as often as twice a year. And again, as we've discovered, sometimes breaking away from a utility provider mid-contract can be as low as €50. Do a health check with your district heating system. Air leaks and seals are inexpensive to fix, but can add to the efficiency of your plant. The benefits of starting down this journey, if you haven't already started, is that you will save money, you will add value, and of course, you will have an impact on the environment. So again, thank you, David, and thank you all for taking the time to listen. I'll hand you back to David there now.
Super, thanks very much indeed, Alan. Much appreciated, and really great to get insights into IRA's practical operations on the ground in terms of its energy saving agenda. We're running, would you believe it, a little bit ahead of time, which is fantastic, which gives us some time for your questions that have come in. And again, we're delighted that you've taken the time to pop some questions to us in advance by email. So we have a number of those, and we'll deal with those first, and then we can look at the questions that have come in live. So the first one that we received in was in relation to solar panels, and I'll just read it out. What would an apartment complex need to consider if looking to install solar panels on the roof, and what supports are available? Our development has 2,800 square meters, which is flat or moderate slope. How can such projects be best funded, in particular where there may be an extended payback period? And I think maybe it was Alan, you were going to take that one.
Yeah. Again, it'll vary from building to building. I'm not going to give any plugs to any companies here online today, but there's a lot of providers in this sphere. So as I say, it can depend on whether you want to own the installation yourself. You know, if you want to keep the solar panels, there are companies out there, big companies that in the utility sphere who are providing these at no cost. And you get the benefit of a reduced rate. When it comes to the size and scale of the building, again, it can vary. Flat roofs are absolutely fine. I think you mentioned there's somebody who's talking about a flat roof. Flat roofs are absolutely fine. The design and build will be taken on by the project manager. And you know, once they're getting light, they're relatively maintenance free. You might need to wash them every year or something like that, or give them a rinse down. But other than that, they're relatively maintenance free. But 2,800 square meters is a significant size. And I mean, one of the suggestions, as I kind of mentioned there earlier on, the beauty about solar panels is they are kind of a plug and play system. So you can start small if you want to. You don't actually have to fill the 2,800 square meters. So again, depending on your budget, if you're a property manager and you're managing a building and you can make savings in the electricity sphere, and as I said, put it into an ESG sinking fund or set up an ESG sinking fund, you can, put in X amount of solar panels today with a view to adding more and more on. Again, you can add batteries to it, but you really need to talk to the experts out there. And there is enough of them out there that will come out and give you a free assessment on your building.
And hopefully many of them are joining us today. And I think what I take away from most of your answer is that a pilot scheme in a small part of your development can be a good way to start. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So I think the next question, I think maybe Nick was going to take it. I hold a freehold block of 4 2-bed apartments in a standalone building. The BER rating is poor D&E because of electric storage heating. We'd like to upgrade to heat pumps. How would that work? What grants are available? What's the best way to do it? Maybe over to you, Nick.
Okay, thank you, David. And I think that question is 3 parts. That question. And I suppose before I do answer, I should have said at the beginning the caveat that I am not an expert in this at all. So I just want to put that out there in case you haven't guessed already. I am not the expert. But I did look at the question. I've got an answer for you now, which is to get from an E or a D to a B2 is a significant improvement in energy usage. It's, you're going from 300 kilowatt hours to 100 kilowatt hours. A 200 kilowatt hour of an improvement. A single measure alone is unlikely to be able to ever achieve that. Rule of thumb for a heat pump is you're looking at between 70 and 120 kilowatt hours. So even if it was possible, you're not going to make it with that single measure. But what I would say is that the other issue with heat pumps is they have what's called a HLI, which is a heat loss indicator. And unless that HLI is below 2 watts per Kelvin per meter squared, very technical. And as I say, I'm not the expert, but unless it's that thermally efficient already, then you actually wouldn't apply the heat pump technology anyway. You just wouldn't be doing it because the heat you generate is going out the walls, and then the output from a heat pump just wouldn't actually keep that property warm enough. So I think your answer probably is a multiple of you need to look at fabric upgrades as well as just looking at the heat pump, so that you're making the thermal performance of the building far tighter before you then start looking at the technology that you're going to use then to heat the building. In terms of grants, there are grants available for apartments, certainly through the one-stop shop. If you're on the SAO website, you can see exactly what measures and what grants they can attract. They're exactly the same as the houses. Typically, they're slightly less, but they're all the measures are there. So you can go for cavity wall, you can go for external insulation, internal insulation, heat pumps. All of that is available for apartments as well. The final part for that was individual systems or a communal system. 4 units may just be about doable in terms of a communal system, but it's not a simple, straightforward thing of I've saved on the capital cost. I've only installed 1 unit rather than 4 separate units. You've got to think about cable runs. You've got to think about service ducts. How you're going to get. You've got to think about metering. You've now got 4 individual metering that you're going to have to apply. We have yet to come up with a suitable communal system that works in terms of certainly in terms of heat pumps, and even in terms of some of those retrofit schemes that Kate looked at, and existing buildings. We have yet to use heat pumps. We've used exhaust air, but not air to water heat pumps, purely because of the practicalities around actually running the service the size of the plant. So it may just about be doable with 4. I certainly think you'd struggle with anything larger than that. But I do have that caveat that I'm not the expert, and it's certainly, as Alan suggested, bring in the guys that know.
Super, great stuff. Thanks very much. Nick, the next question that came in is in relation to smart meters in common areas, and are they good and effective in common areas? Is an apartment owner or tenant or the management company responsible for installation? is the apartment electricity account holder responsible for choice, tariff and price? I think Alan, were you going to touch on that one maybe? Or was Nick going to answer that one? I don't remember the smart meters question. But when they
I can answer I don't
Nick.
have an answer is the simple answer, because we haven't done it. My initial thoughts are data is key. And if smart meters are providing with additional information that you wouldn't get without the installation of a smart meter, then I can see that there could be strong advantages in doing that, and in terms of actually shaping behaviour. But as we haven't installed that within any of our developments, so I don't know in terms of how that rolls out.
Alan, did you want to jump in? Or will we
No,
carry
I was
on
going to
with the
say
next question?
a bit like what Nick was saying. I mean, they are starting to be rolled out in some of the complexes, and it is down to the networks more than anything else who are going to put these in. I haven't seen them do individual apartment owners. They were done, if you like, as a building as a whole.
Okay, super. Thanks a million, Alan. Just, I suppose, in the context of where we are this week, would you believe it serendipitously it happens to be European Sustainable Development Week? So we could claim that we planned this session to happen this week, but we'd be told a porky on that one. But it is serendipitous that we're in that week. And I suppose reflecting on the launch of the Housing Alliance's report, and what's driving a lot of this for the larger organisations in terms of ESG is the reporting element. And maybe Kate, just coming to yourself on that, I suppose at the moment these reporting requirements and decarbonisation are mandatory for some of the larger organisations, but I suppose at some point it's going and it's desirable for a lot more of them, but at some point it's going to become mandatory, I suppose, down the tiers. And I was at the launch of the report 2 weeks ago, and things like, I suppose, looking into the future for finance. So there may come a point in time where owners management companies are going to borrow, and maybe they need to have their ducks in a row around this. So how does that sit in the AHB sector? What are the practical implications for, say, borrowing costs for AHBs around this?
Well, I suppose just from a reporting perspective for the AHB sector, it's going to be quite new for us. We're going to be responsible to report under CSRD probably from the end of 2025. So we're just at the stage of gathering information. Obviously, it will have an impact, or it could have an impact on financing costs. We're looking at that at the moment, but we are at the stage of doing initial carbon assessments, doing our scope 1 and hopefully our scope 3 carbon footprinting from next year. But we're collecting data is what's really critical at this stage. And I think that's probably the same for IRES and across all of the AHBs, is just being able to pull together the information, understanding your property, understanding the usage, your energy usage, your carbon output, and then being able to form a baseline that you can report on in the future. You can only set reasonable targets once you understand, your baseline and the information that you have.
It comes back to the old maxim: you can only manage what you can measure, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll move on to the next question that came in around air-to-air heating. Is that suitable for apartments? They have an existing infrastructure in a block, and they want to maybe look at air-to-air heating. Would each apartment have to have its own wall bank or balcony mounted heat exchanger? So I might throw that one across. Who wants to volunteer? Nick, maybe I see you coming off mute.
Yeah, I think I touched on this earlier, that we have had difficulties installing certainly air-to-water heat pumps, and we've relied predominantly on exhaust air, which again, if you're looking at it as a retrofit, then you'll probably need much higher levels of thermal performance with the structure. So you've got a much tighter energy improvement program as well that would need to go hand in hand, because potentially you're now looking at 60,000-70,000 worth of costs, which is some of the apartments that we've looked at. In terms of the communal aspect, if you can give me a month and a half, I'll probably be able to answer that better. We've actually got one scheme which has a communal heating system that we're now looking at for a planned program for next year. And we actually asked that question ourselves: is what are our options rather than just replace it with a gas-fired communal system? Could we look at something that was more energy efficient? That was literally earlier this week. So if you give me a little bit longer, I'll be able to come back with a more reasoned argument for that one. At the moment, I don't know. We're looking at the feasibility of it.
Excellent, Nick. That sounds like a commitment to participate in another webinar from you. So I know you'd be delighted to do that. A good question that's come in, is in relation to the data issue, and it's come in from Sean. How did the panel gain access to tenant utility data when you own the block? That is an issue when the tenant pays the bills, so very hard to identify usage. So anyone want to? Nick?
Yeah, okay, I'll take that one as well. We do it by consent. That's as simple as it can be. We can't go around doing meter readings because we would like to be interested. We've had this conversation about water usage, and not just in terms of gas, electric, but also water. There's a meter there. Can we not take readings? It's in the outside of the garden. One of the guys is going around or girls is going around. Can we not actually just slip the cover and take a meter? We can't do it. We'd have to do it by consent. We work with our tenants because even the upgrade program itself, these are people's homes. We can't just go in and do works that we want to do unless they're ready for it to be done for them. So it's all about working with people, explaining what we're doing, asking them to take a record of their energy bills if they, over a period of time beforehand. We do monitoring. So we fit environmental sensors that records the temperature change before and after. So we can monitor over a period of time. But it is very much with the consent and participation of our tenants.
Kate, did you want to jump in on that?
No, that's, as Nick said, it's all done in coordination with our tenants. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. And again, it just comes back to what we've all been talking about. It is the communication line with the residents in the building. So being able to openly talk to people and say, here's what we're looking to do. Here's the plan for the building. Here's a potential strategy of what we're looking at the building, both, as I say, not just the common area, not just the service charge cost, looking at, internally in the apartments of what we can do. So again, as Kate says, we're in the information gathering phase. It is about kind of benchmarking that data now and to see where we go from there.
Perfect. Thanks, Alan. A question has come in from Danielle about older apartment buildings with gas boilers. What are the options for replacing these with something more sustainable as they fall due for replacement? Can't see that heat pumps are an option. Anyone want to come in on that? Maybe Nick,
yeah, I think again it goes back to that each scheme is individual and will have different characteristics at play. I think the heating is only one part of it. We have certainly taken that fabric first approach. So we are looking at insulation, ventilation, and air tightness, and then looking secondary at what form of heating do we have. If, as I said, I mentioned, we're looking at the replacement of a communal heating system. Same goes for domestic heating systems. If you're replacing a heating system, then it makes sense to look at what options you have. We actually budget now and program for one cycle of a gas boiler. So if we take on a new scheme, we budget for one cycle of a gas boiler and then heat pump replacement after that. That may change, technology may advance, so we actually accelerate those programs. But at the moment, that's the kind of budgeting thoughts that we have.
Super. There's a couple of questions coming in relation to grants, and I think as Alan mentioned, the SEAI Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland website is a good place to start. So seai.ie will get you there on the detail of grants in relation to individual apartments. In terms of, I see questions coming in on planning. And I think from memory, there have been recent changes to planning law to give specific exemptions for, say, solar panels on apartment blocks. Isn't that right, Alan? That came in.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it depends on the makeup, the size, the location. There's a couple of variables that you have to look at. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, the barrier to entry is pretty low. I don't think you'll have an issue there.
Great stuff. I see further questions coming in about individual models for individual developments. I think that talk to the individual providers. A question from Lindsay: has there been any concern from the panelists on the embodied carbon of the materials being used in energy upgrades on residential buildings? So I suppose this is the breaking eggs to make an omelette. Maybe Kate, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, I saw that question come in, and it's a very good point. I suppose the honest answer at the moment is no. you know, embodied carbon measurement is something that we would look at in terms of our renovation projects. In particular, we haven't started that analysis yet for the pure retrofitting of our legacy portfolio. The priority really is just to get that done and to get the properties upgraded. It's something I think embodied carbon measurements is going to become more and more important over the next few years, and something that we will have to look at. Yeah.
So David, if I just come in,
please.
We are involved in an EU-funded research project, which hopefully will take that a little bit further forward, where the materials that we use to do particularly in terms of the insulation, will be bio-based. So we'll have a much lower carbon content than your standard retrofit. So it's very much early days. We've identified one property. We have a pilot to do 10, and as I say, that's in collaboration with a number of European partners. So we are excited about that, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out when we've completed the work.
Excellent. Again, another example of where collaboration is key. Look, it's 25 past the hour, and I'm inclined to wrap it up there. We have lots of other feedback coming in, and we'll endeavour to get back to people individually over the next number of days. I'd like to express my thanks to Alan, to Kate, and to Nick for fantastic insights into what their organisations are doing on the ground. Thank them very much for their generosity of time in preparing for this session, because it wasn't just today. There's a lot of work put into to get the quality of information and quality of insights from all of our panelists. I'd like to thank everyone for logging in today and joining us. I hope you found the session of benefit. Again, lots of challenges out there for OMCs and individual directors and management agents on the operational day-to-day side. Hopefully today gave some food for thought, get the juices flowing on the issues that we need to address in terms of sustainability and climate action in our homes, ultimately on the ground. I'd like to thank Graham for his assistance in the background as well, and my colleagues in the communications and policy and practice teams in the agency for their assistance in launching and running the webinar today. A reminder again of our outreach events, which are taking place over the next number of weeks into mid-November. Details on our website, housingagency.ie, and indeed the other publications and resources that we're issuing over the next period. Thanks again for joining us. Keep an eye on our website for those future events, and we wish you a pleasant afternoon. Enjoy your lunch, and Slán Tamil. Gurmagh.